I've literally been racing against the weather to try over the last few weeks to get this as near to done as I can. Alas, I've just been so preoccupied with it that I kind of forgot to record any of it. Yeah, but as you can see, lining's in, including even the proper finishing stitches on the hem and on the, the inner seam between the back and the side panels, all done by hand. Pockets are done. Aha, or are they? I was indeed so caught up in such a hurry that I completely forgot to do my traditional Barcelona pocket until I think I was already into making a collar, and I suddenly realised, wait a minute, something's missing here. I think theoretically, if I really wanted to, I could open up again this seam here between the back and side panels of the lining, the one that's hand sewn shut, work in a pocket by hand if I really wanted to, if I find that it's just too precious a thing to do without. But, you know, fortunate that I made my superfluous one here, isn't it? Yeah, I kind of took a sort of week off last week and had a real blast through this. And yeah, as you can see, we really are almost on the home straight now. I think today I'm just going to lay into, well, mainly the sleeve, although there's another little thing I want to do first, which we'll see in a minute. Yeah, just see how far I get. But yeah, I've already tried on this base kind of bodice situation, the sleeveless coat so far. I'm pretty happy with the fit. I think it's panned out well. Yeah, and I look forward to getting the sleeves on, and probably not on this video, but maybe the next one, which I promise will come a little bit sooner than this one has. You will see just how it fits. You will see it in its final form. So isn't that exciting? A couple of things of note, if they are of note. Well, I've got to think of something that's of note now, haven't I? Right, yeah, shoulders are done. Shoulders were pretty uneventful, except for that I pasted my seam allowance the wrong way on the inside, but that's not really very interesting. Yeah, the collar, maybe the most interesting thing here is I haven't used collar melton on the underside. Often when you're working with these heavier wool fabrics, especially these heavier tweeds, you can really just substitute the garment fabric itself for the melton, because the garment fabric itself is, or has a similar weight and, you know, similar character, similar capabilities as far as manipulation is concerned to the melton. And yeah, it just means that, as is more likely to be the case with a winter coat where you might want to put the collar up versus like a suit jacket where, why would you do that? Yeah, it's just a bit nicer to have the garment fabric on the underneath, and yeah, that's also panned out rather nicely. And unlike with my suit jackets, I haven't had any sort of horrific scares with getting the shoulders to lie flat, probably mostly to do with the fact that this is just a bit looser, a bit chunkier. It's probably quite forgiving in that regard. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there are really any alarms. Anything really to report. If I think of anything, I'll let you know as we go. So let's go. So I think the question, what am I doing here, is one that is justified to be asked. So you may have seen, or I can show you again later, that there are some little loops on the back panel of my jacket which are going to serve to hold in place a little belt. I've alluded to this belt before because, again, I've cut this coat relatively roomy, on the roomy side, because I want to be able to wear lots of layers underneath it. And I also was a bit uncertain as to how exactly really it should fit in relation to whatever underlayers, you know, how snug it should be in and of itself. So I, you know, went a bit up, and I thought if I have a little belt, then I can just cinch the waist a little bit, create a bit more of that shape, even though actually I find that that shape is already there in the cut, so I'm quite pleased about that. But anyway, create a bit more shape and also just help snuggen things up, if that's the way to put it, when I'm wearing it, when it's particularly cold, so on and so forth. I don't know why I'm trying to justify the concept of having a belt on an overcoat. It is pretty normal. So that's what I'm making here. Oh, please, let's not spill anything. I don't need to draw a line there. Yeah, and I hadn't, due to how poorly I'd kind of planned the cutting out, the lay of all my pieces, specifically I think I ruined it by just kind of willy-nilly cutting out pocket flaps right in the middle, basically, of my entire roll of fabric, which I do not recommend doing. I wasn't able to cut this all in one piece as I'd planned, so I've just gonna, yeah, I've got these two, well, what will soon be identical pieces that I'll then attach together in such a manner as to make a belt, and that's, I think, the first thing I'm gonna do here. Yeah, it's been quite fun making this coat. I've done a lot of kind of more improvisatory steps, I guess, and just sort of worked out myself, not that anything's been especially complex, but, you know, worked out / made up myself how it is these things are gonna work. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased to find that so far everything has kind of been, yeah, working. Isn't that nice? So yeah, you shall see presently how this is all gonna fit together once I have made my mind up exactly how that is gonna be. Yoink. Ooh. Don't want another shears on laptop screen fiasco again, do I? Wait, so that'd be like that, right sides facing. Cool, so yeah, I'm just gonna join these at the back first before I do anything further, so just sew across there, and that'll be that. Oh yeah, that's normally what I need to do. Yeah, so not to kind of talk shop, as it were, about the nature of this channel while I'm just serving up the content, if you like. And of course, I'm talking ahead of time, right at the start of this sewing day, but I'm expecting this video is probably gonna pan out a little bit longer than the last few, or the ones that I've been used to making. Yeah, and you've probably also noticed that I've been posting a little less frequently, and indeed regularly, than usual, or than previously. So when I first started the channel, I was in the fortunate position of, well, I was kind of between jobs basically, so I had a lot of spare time to basically just run with the channel and just post a lot. That was a lot of fun. Things have changed now. I don't quite have as much time to devote to the channel, though I still have time to devote, and I want to devote it. But yeah, so I will probably not be posting as much as I have been, and maybe not, again, as regularly either, so, you know, not at a sort of predictable interval all the time. It might be that it's more like sort of one video a month, but I think for that, I might try and sort of make them be a bit more voluptuous, if you like, you know, a bit longer. Which comes to the second point, which is, yeah, the thing that I love the most about doing this channel is what I was already doing, namely the sewing, the tailoring, the creating, that this channel exists to sort of, what's the word, you know, provide a stage for. And while I do also enjoy and have enjoyed very much the editing side of things and, you know, learning how to do that from scratch, basically, not that I'm doing anything especially difficult in that regard, yeah, I have enjoyed that a great deal, but it is the part of the whole video making situation that feels a lot more like just work. And, you know, not that I am against work per se, but, you know, this started out as a kind of a fun thing basically, and I would like to keep it that way as much as I can. And again, with time constraints that are starting to impose themselves, I just want to make sure that I am leaving as much time as possible to do the thing that actually matters, namely sew. But yeah, so what's the point of all this? At least for the next little while, you know, I think I've been trying, partly through the fascination of learning to edit and things like that itself, and also just trying to make what feels like more, you know, just watchable content, I suppose. I've been trying to sort of often edit things a bit more snappily and, you know, cut what maybe could be felt to be like the fat of the process and so on and so forth. But realistically, it could also well be that I've just been cutting out perfectly watchable bits. I mean, it's always that thing of, you know, what would I myself have found interesting to watch? And yeah, at least for the time being, just so I'm not drowning under the same kind of editing load that I less and less have the time to do, it might be that the next few videos, or at least, you know, the videos for the next little while, become a little bit more freewheeling and loosey-goosey, if you like. So basically a little bit longer, a little bit more open-endedly edited, you know, maybe not quite as snappy and choppy. Not that I have ever been some sort of Michael Bay style filmmaker in the past. Anyway, yeah, and of course, if you do not enjoy that, please do let me know. That's perfectly fine. And I'm not saying that this is how it's gonna forever be from now on, but yeah, I just thought time's running short, or time is always running shorter as far as what I have to spare on making these videos is concerned. And I just want to make sure that I am saving as much of that time that I do have for the actual making and the sewing and so on and so forth, the actual generating the raw content, if you like, and not sort of giving over too much time in whittling away what is often, you know, many hours of footage in order to make a sort of 15-minute video, which, you know, maybe could as happily have been a 30-minute video or a 45-minute video, or who knows. But again, I would be very curious to hear your thoughts on that, and, you know, I'm sure some people enjoy the shorter stuff and some people are happy to watch the longer stuff. You know, everyone is entitled to their own preferences on that front. But yeah, just essentially a heads up, a very long-winded one, perhaps appropriately, that is probably what it's going to be looking like for the next short while. And yeah, I apologise to anyone whom that distresses. But yeah, unfortunately, at some point one does have to, you know, one can't have 40 hours a week to devote to making tailoring videos, can one? Anyway, so that's just going to be the one layer of pocketing, just to give that a slight bit of reinforcement, and yeah, I'll just add another little bit on the end there, and yeah, all shall be revealed in due course. Yeah, again, pretty ironic, I suppose, that I expressed all this news with an extremely long-winded, unscripted ramble regarding it. Yeah, so what's going to happen is I'm just going to, using my garment thread, just slip stitch this loosely into the sort of middle bit, and then this will get caught in the actual seam. It's going to come on the other side. But yeah, I'll do all that once I've done the other side as well. Some of the lovely wool that my wife has been knitting with recently. Yeah, so just stitching this in, diagonal stitching or slip stitching or whatever. On the inner side, again, that'll get caught, this other edge will get caught in the actual stitch when I sew this all together. And yeah, I don't want the pocketing flapping around on the inside when I remove the basting. And yeah, I guess because the dimensions of this coat aren't actually bigger than anything else I've made before, I shouldn't have been surprised, but you know, once I've put together the bodice and sewn the shoulders and the kind of main structure of the jacket, except for the sleeves, is kind of already there. You know, I'm often prone to think, yeah, you know what, we're kind of over the hill now, and the rest is kind of just this like downward slope into the finished garment. And, you know, that's kind of true to an extent, but I really did notice with this, you know, as I said, I've already done the hand stitching of the lining seams and I've done the hem and all this stuff. And that's a lot of stuff which I often, you know, leave basted until the very end when I'm just doing this massive round of finishing, stitching and so on and so forth. But I just kind of elected to do it ahead of time this time. And I really did realize, my God, there is so much hand stitching to be done in a garment of this type and a garment of this size especially. And you know, this is just one tiny little example of it. You know, these little sort of purely structural stitches that just, you know, even when, like me, you're extremely lazy and you're taking these very generous sort of 1.5 centimeter stitches, this is going to take me like, you know, 10, 15 minutes just to do this. Essentially just to do what, if you're using fusible interfacing, would get done with about 10 seconds on the iron. But let's not use fusible interfacing, eh? Not with a beautiful fabric like this. Yeah, maybe I'll just do like 2-hour videos full of me sitting there sewing in silence and just make it some weird kind of a jazz showcase. I'm sure we would all appreciate that. Although I'm pretty sure that anyone who has actually expressed an opinion on the jazz backing music of any kind has usually expressed one of sort of well, you know, I don't like it, but I'll put up with it. Which is exactly the kind of response I want to inspire in my viewers. Begrudging toleration. Oh, dear me. Well, call that karma, I guess. Yeah, so that pocketing now is kind of secure or half secure, and will get secured on the other side imminently. I'm gonna sew along that edge now, all the way along. Oh my God, how long is this actually? I think it's like 1.9 meters, which is what I would call long, taller than me. Yeah, sew along there, and then also along one of these little edges, and then I'll bag it out, and yeah, I think it will be rather self-explanatory. Oh dear me. So I've just pressed that back into the fold that it will have once it's bagged out. So this is the right side. It'll just make it easier to, yeah, to bag it out and get it into that position once I've sewn this. But yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do now. Ooh. Yeah, just gonna catch again that pocketing in the seam. Got 2 centimeter seam allowance here. And I think that's also just gonna help with, I don't know, I often find when I'm bagging things out that, although this is usually to do with belt loops and things which are very narrow and that need a lot of cajoling. But you know, the seam itself often comes under a lot of like distress when you're doing it, you know, whether you're kind of poking something through or you're shaking something through. So I think having the pocketing also reinforcing the seam itself is maybe no bad thing. And also, you know, it's probably not especially consequential either way, really, much like a lot of what I do. Straight lines, just can't beat them. Ooh. Yeah, this, like everything else, is taking significantly longer already than I'd imagined it to. But what did I say last time? It'll take as long as it takes. Yeah, I really enjoy it. I don't know if it's especially audible for you guys, but this little like kind of like mini popping sound as the pocketing gets punctured by the needle. Don't know why, it's just very pleasurable. It's like bubble wrap. Yeah, because obviously this is gonna have a lot of yanking going on with this belt. And the wool itself is obviously very strong, but it's also quite pliable. And it will be, you know, this coat, honestly, when I put it on, it's so heavy, unsurprisingly, given the weight of the fabric and everything that's in it. But yeah, it's, you know, if it's being tied around that coat, it's doing a lot of work in terms of compressing all that fabric within it. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I thought about just doing it with only the wool, no pocketing, no reinforcement, but I think I figured that wouldn't really be especially stable, would it? Where are we? There we are. Be careful here with these seam allowances. I've already had this once with the shoulder where I ended up folding both of my big chunky seam allowances on top of each other rather than sort of splaying them out. And I'd only noticed I'd done this once I'd already fully sewn the collar on, and it was kind of a bit too late to undo it, unless I wanted to redo the collar, which obviously I didn't. Yeah, so gotta be careful. Oh. Yeah, it's funny, or so you might say. I've just thought about the fact that, you know, I picked a width of 6 centimeters relatively arbitrarily, without really considering a rather crucial matter, namely how much space I left for the belt in the little belt loops. It's quite possible that 6 centimeters is a little more than they can comfortably accommodate. So we'll see, won't we? Silly old me. Wasn't I patting myself on the back earlier for my improvisational flair? Hubris. Oh, dear me, that's not good. Oh, yeah, you see what's happened here? So, like, the length of this has become quite uneven. I don't really know how or really whether to worry about this, but let's see what we can do. There's clearly some basic sewing machine technical etiquette that I ignore because this does seem to happen to me a lot. These things sort themselves out, eh? Yeah, I don't know if this is just an effect of a thicker fabric, you know, the sort of distance that the needle has to go, the pace at which the dogs underneath the little feet and the sewing foot itself are going are kind of probably a bit out of sync, aren't they? Oh, dear me, this is pretty terrible, actually. Okay. Well, I know what we'll do here. Not gonna worry too much about this. I'm just gonna sew across there now, trim that, and then bag out from here. I'll have to turn the machine off then. This is really stupid. Oh God. Oh, this is really twisty. A better man than I would unpick this and redo it, but I've yet to meet him. See, I don't even know I did get the seam allowance stuck. You know what, I'm just gonna, I'm done with this. Nothing that a little pressing won't fix, he hopes. Alrighty. Even that is so wonky. What is wrong with me? Lost my mind. Okay. Snippy corners. Oh yeah, I probably need to actually press that, don't I? Yeah, a really good argument for basting pretty much any seam before you sew it, so that it doesn't get all twisty like that. And yeah, also realised too late that it was stupid of me to, or unnecessary at least, to press in the true crease before sewing it, you know, this one here that I'd put in, because yeah, you need to kind of press the seam allowance before you turn something out, so silly old me. Oh my goodness, yeah, belt loops, all that stuff are truly my sworn enemy. I think that's why, actually, it's really the main reason why I never bothered putting belt loops on my trousers, despite the fact that, being flat-arsed as I am, I usually desperately need them. It's just because making them, bagging them out, turning them out like this is just so, not even tedious, it's just infuriating. I don't know if you have that feeling sometimes when you're, what's like a good example? I can't really think of one. Where you're doing something like this and you're kind of trying and trying and trying, you know, you're pulling at the same thing, where, you know, you're picking at the same thing, you're like, it's almost like trying not to scratch an itch, but it's like you're so desperate to scratch it. You're so desperate to get the thing through and it's just not responding that you almost like, I don't know, I almost get like nauseous. It's very bizarre. Good thing it's only the 2 meters in this case. Oh dear Lord, there must be a better way. Oh, do I have a long stick anywhere? Never really needed one until now. Oh well. Yeah, this is what I meant when I said I wanted to do some more long-winded videos, is make you guys watch for the next 17.6 minutes while I do this by hand. Look, you know, if you don't like it, my apologies. Yeah, I realise it's probably better to go at it from the other end, the closed end, and yeah, I've got a little mop handle here. This seems to be working a bit better. Oh dear me. See, shows how infrequently I allow myself to have to do this, that I've completely forgotten how. Oh, that's a workout and a half. It's just one of the 100 or so moments in the whole process of making this or something like it where you just think, do I even really want a nice tweed winter coat? Ugh, God. Oh, she blows. It's like Alien. I really never thought I would do anything like this in one of my videos. Oh well. It's first time for everything, isn't there? Okay, I think from here, you can bid farewell to the mop handle. Thanks. Thank you for your service. And do it this way, good old fashioned way. Ooh. Oh my God, there's so much so much wool fluff here. Oh, I hope that's not the sound of stitches coming loose. And here we have it. My belt, 9/10 done. Okay, I'm gonna go and press this and maybe give the table a little bit of a hoover. And there we have it. Yep, so that's bagged out nicely enough. Don't have one of those little corner turner things. And yeah, this other bit, this looser end, which is bagged out through, I'm just gonna tuck in sort of 2 centimeters of seam allowance there, close that by hand, and yeah, then that's kind of that there really. I will probably do some sort of kind of pick stitching at the end when I'm doing all my pick stitching, sort of just along this, just to kind of give it a bit more form and, a bit of a beautification, just, something to do really, busybodying, finishing stitches. But yeah, this done kind of for now. And yeah, I just sort of wrapped it around my waist, and even just the weight of this belt alone is kind of pretty significant. I'm gonna get so fit from like wearing this coat actually. Next winter, of course, but you get the idea. No, if I can get it done in the next week or two, then there should be enough rainy days, I think, down the line, enough sort of chilly ones to get a little flavour of what I've got to look forward to next winter. Yeah, this is also kind of how I did it. This is basically just a really enlarged version of what I did with the little loops themselves. I think I did sew them with the machine and then turn them out, but then I just kind of attached them firstly by hand. So this was kind of before I'd attached the back panel to the side panels. I just sewed them on by hand first, sort of slip stitched them on, and then top stitched them with the machine, and then sort of closed up the side and back seams and the lining and all that jazz to kind of, what's going on there? Just make it really secure, those loops, because again, there'll also be a lot of stress on them as well. There's this, that's just a random thread, isn't it? Yeah, and the loops are kind of standing out a bit. I think I sort of bunched them up a bit too much, but I thought, I don't want there being a lot of friction between the belt and the loops that they're going through, because that'll just sort of cause wear. And, I want it to be held in firmly enough without it being sort of shredded every single time I pull it one way or another. Yeah, it's just doing a kind of ladder stitch here to close this up. That is also the beauty of this fabric. It's just so fluffy and so deeply toned and texturally craggy and rich that all these sort of like hand stitches, they just get completely lost visually. So I'm being even more careless perhaps than I've usually been. Yeah, a little holiday for me, I guess. Already yank that shut. Okay. I think 2 more stitches. Alrighty then. So that's the belt. Freestyled, you might say. Yep, I'll set that aside for now. Oh, hello. And yeah, go and have some lunch. And it's on with the sleeves. Alrighty then. 2 inventions of humankind that I'd like to shout out at this particular time. Firstly, lunch, really one of our finest achievements. Secondly, pet hair attachments for vacuum cleaners, which I've just used to clean away all that fluff from this tweed, because after all, what is this if not pet hair at the end of the day? Pet sheet would be nice, wouldn't it? I bet they're very loyal. Cool, right, yeah, so. That's rather rhythmical. Yeah, we've got some sleeving in front of us. First things first, I'm going to construct it. And the interesting thing about these sleeves is going to be that there is no vent, which saves me a lot of fiddly trouble. Yeah, although there might be some other unexpected trouble down the line, as there often is with things you're doing for the first time. But yeah, so I really am just going to sew both these side seams rather normally, and then yeah, you'll see how I manage with the lining when we get to that. So yeah, first things first, we'll do the, what's it called? Wait, I'm doing this, yeah, no, the inner seam. And you know what, I think in the interests of learning from one's mistakes, I'm going to base this first, because it's only a little distance, isn't it? So Cool. Yeah, as with basically every other aspect of this coat, I've not really, I've erred on the side of caution as far as roominess is concerned. I think this sleeve, as you saw, there was a muslin sleeve on the coat, which I'd, done as is sensible just to test how things were looking. And yeah, with like the pitch of the sleeve and all that stuff. Yeah, and I felt like it was on the roomier side. And again, if I've got my big thick woolly jumpers on underneath this, that's gonna be appropriate. And of course, once you've got the proper fabric and the lining in, that's taking up even more room. And I'm hoping it'll be that sort of perfect balance between snug and maneuverable. So yeah, just perfection. That's all I'm really aiming for. I don't think that's too much to ask. Let's see, again, basting in a straight line. Really doing anything in a straight line is it's usually a sort of 6 out of 10 or upwards activity for me. Righty then. Yeah, and I'm going to do some similar things that I would do if I were doing it with an event, like I'm going to reinforce the sort of cuff area, because I want to leave the option of maybe adding a little sort of, kind of like wrist strap in case I decide I want to add one later. I'm not going to add one to start with, purely out of laziness really, but I figure, well, reinforcing the cuff is not really a bad idea in any case, and if I do then decide that I want to add a sort of little wrist strap, just to make sure I can sort of tighten up the cuff on those windy days, then I can do so without having to sort of like unpick the entire sleeve and insert some reinforcement there, and it'll just be there, ready and waiting, and otherwise not doing any harm in the meantime. Cool, let's sew this together. Yeah, I think anything that resembles a straight line or a straight seam, I usually decline to baste because I just think, how hard can it be? And as I've just proven with that 2 meter long belt, turns out hard enough, so. And again, it's that weird sort of love-hate relationship with basting. On the one hand, it's kind of my favorite thing to do, but that's kind of only if it's absolutely necessary that I do it. If it's not necessary, then my inborn laziness usually wins out, and I, just outright decline. But in this case, I think it was a good idea. Right, go and give this a press. Oops. Always try and do that so swiftly and elegantly, and then end up with these missing and getting these big straggly bits. Who cares? Alrighty then. So there's my sleeve, nice and pressed, and here I've got these sort of bias cut strip of pocketing, bias cut so that I can use the iron to make it into this curve, as you see. So this was initially just a straight panel, and I've used the iron and steam and so on to curve it. Yeah, a little bit bigger than it needs to be, but that's fine. Yeah, so I'll just baste that in and then sort of fix it at the seam allowance here for now. And yeah, then I will do the rest, as you'll see. Oh, where's my basting? Where's the basting stuff gone? Things fly from this desk so readily. I don't think I was that unpleasant a taskmaster, but I suppose I must be. Yeah, so incidentally, you might be wondering what it is that I've done to procure this sleeve pattern. Did I draft the new one? Did I use my existing one, and so on and so forth? So what I did was basically akin to what I'd done with the main panels, which was kind of traced off my existing sleeve pattern for my jacket, because again, the basic panels for this coat, so the pattern panels for this coat, like the body pieces and so on, were also adapted in the very first video of this series from my existing sort of suit jacket pattern, because, broadly speaking, the fit and so on is correct with that pattern, and then just sort of expanded, sized up, as it were, to create something roomier. And I did the same with this sleeve, basically. Again, I think that sleeve pattern that I have for my suit jacket works pretty well. It's probably not perfect, but it's just, serves the purpose as far as I can tell. And yeah, I have just done the same thing, basically, kind of graded it up, expanded it. And of course, with the ease situation that you have when you're setting in a sleeve, trying to ease the sleeve cap into the armhole, which is smaller than the sleeve cap, the rule of thumb is kind of about like, you want the sleeve cap to be, or the opening of the sleeve, the upper opening of the sleeve, to be 5 centimeters longer or larger on that seam than the armhole seam, basically. And in fact, it's, yeah, so you can go a little bit higher if you have a finer fabric, and then, you wouldn't want to go too much higher than that with a thicker fabric like this, because of course, the thicker the fabric, the less easily the excess fabric, those ripples and so on, get put away. And yeah, so I worked, I made sure, I can't remember what the numbers were, but I made sure, okay, well, if my armhole is this big, then that means my sleeve cap can only be so big. Aimed towards that, basically, and then just kind of, expanded it up in the following fashion. So yeah, I generally lengthened it, and then with the sleeve cap, which is the main thing, I sort of stretched it out a little bit on either side, and then I sort of scaled the cap upwards a little bit like that. Obviously nothing so dramatic. Oh yeah, and of course, because the armhole is actually going lower rather than higher in this coat, you know, it needs to be at a lower point to let the arm through, the sleeve through and stuff. This was actually scooped down rather than scaled up, so it's almost like a widening S here. So rather than like this, if this were the original pattern, it was almost like that, and then going in there and so on and so forth. Yeah, anyway, cool. Right, so what am I doing here? I'm just fixing the pocketing into the seam allowance here, and then I'm going to sew the other seam, catch the other pocketing ends in the seam, and then yeah, we'll move to the lining and you'll see how that's going to work. Yeah, again, a lot of sort of improvisational work here, and sleeve patterns generally are a bit of a nightmarish proposition when it comes to suit jackets and so on. I think I kind of struck lucky, you know, struck gold, struck something of, you know, moderate value, passable value, let's say, with my sleeve pattern. It seemed to sort of hang okay. I don't remember. Yeah, I did draft it myself a while back and then adapted it as I adapted the rest of the jacket pattern and so on. And it seems to work. It hangs more or less correctly. I think there's still some funny shape things going on around the sleeve cap. You know, the particular shape of the curve obviously makes some difference. I just don't really understand what. Yeah, at some point, maybe once I feel like I myself cracked the code of how these things work, I might do a video on drafting one. Although Reza of the International School of Tailoring, which I've often had cause to mention, not too long ago did a really, really good in-depth video on how to draft a sleeve pattern for your jacket, which I can't imagine that anything I would come up with would be more useful than that, so I would direct you there. But that's enough of that for now. Let's put this all together. Can't believe it, I almost forgot the basting resolution I literally just made about, well, I don't know, 4 camera minutes ago, and not too many more non-camera minutes ago. Oh, jeez Louise. You see, this is why I don't baste. This is why I respect the art of basting, and, you know, respect it in the way that one would respect a sort of a wild and dangerous animal. You know, it's all well and good. Wait, hang on, how am I going to make this this analogy work? You know, it's sometimes, oh, Jesus, you know what? I give up. That's a sign, isn't it? That's a sign. The basting gods do not want me to baste and talk at the same time. Oh! How about baste and squeal? That must be acceptable. Oh, Jesus. Oh. Cut. Yeah, I gotta say, it feels good to not be doing an event this time, although I'm growing to enjoy doing events. They're sort of little exercises in hand sewing precision. But yeah, the part of me that just wants to get this blasted thing finished feels slightly differently about it. But yeah, of course, I'm sure you can do an event on your overcoat sleeves if you would prefer. I'm sure that's not unusual. But I just figured, you know, it's more usual than it is with suit jackets not to have them. So again, in the interest of speed, let them be. I can't really see my seam allowance guide here. That was foolish, wasn't it? Surprise, surprise, basting your seams, great idea. Oh, bother. Okay. Trim that, press this, and then we'll see how it's going to work with the lining, eh? Let's do my favourite thing. Well, almost my favourite thing. Well, that wasn't really quite as satisfying as I hoped it would be. That's more like it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so interestingly, having just been praising sort of my sleeve pattern, I noticed as I was pressing the seam a little bit of a problem. So obviously normally you would want to press this seam open like that. But then what I've ended up with here, because of the shape of my underarm bit, is this little kind of, this little gap in the line there, this little sort of, you know, if that's the, how do I express this? If this is the, that's the line of the sleeve, and obviously the seam, 2 centimeter seam allowance is coming just under there, and that is really much too close to comfort really for me. There should be, the seam should be going up higher, and there should be some fabric here. I don't really know how I missed that, but I just missed it in the design and the cutting of my sleeve pieces. So that won't really wash basically, pressing the seam open like that. So instead I pressed it down to the side, which is gonna probably be a little bit weird, but it's gonna, you know, at least generate that actual fabric I need to close the seam just about, and to have a bit of security. Yeah, I don't know really. I'm just bit of a mishap, but I think it's gonna be okay. Anyway, for now, we're gonna sew the lining, the sleeve lining, much in the same fashion, and then we'll put these things together. Oh, it's just so funny sometimes with tailoring and just sewing in general, being one of these activities with several different stages that you go through. You know, you sort of pattern designing or procuring, and then you're cutting, and then you're sewing, and so on and so forth. And you're just constantly having to reckon with the sort of flashes of idiocy of your past self. Because look at this. I know when I was cutting these out, I really just sort of eyeballed, I didn't even eyeball, I just sort of like left a arbitrary amount of fabric in each piece for a hem. And now I'm looking at this, and it turns out that the length of each one differed between the top sleeve and the bottom sleeve by about, you know, an inch or more. And again, I happen to know why that's happened, and I suppose I can therefore feel all right about it. But honestly, looking at it, it just makes me feel as if whatever I was doing, whatever I was on that particular afternoon when I cut these out, I will never go near it again. More fool me. Also, with these lining fabrics, for goodness sake, trying to tell right side from wrong side. And also with linings generally, because it's like the right side, you know, because the inside is facing outside in the lining, if that makes sense, or the outside is facing inside. Does that make sense? You know, it's very easy to think you're making the left sleeve lining, but then it turns out you've made the right one instead. But you do have to make both at the end of the day, so I suppose it's not the end of the world. Anyway, yeah, for all that I said, let's let it all hang out today. I don't really see any particular reason why you guys should have to watch me baste the lining sleeve together. Or indeed sew, I suppose, but let's see how that goes. Yeah, so with not doing a vent on the sleeve, that doesn't just simplify sewing the sleeve seams themselves, you know, not having to work around a vent and avoid it and so on. But it also simplifies, I hope at least, attaching the lining and the sleeve itself to each other. Because normally with the vent you would have to, you know, hand sew basically the kind of the hem of the lining just around the cuff. But I think I can do it all by machine. I've not done something like this before in any other project, but in my mind it seems like it should be pretty straightforward. I'm sure it will prove not quite as straightforward as I would like to think or hope, but we'll see, won't we? Okay, let's get this wrapped up. Yeah, again, I mean, with this sort of weird mismatch between the size and shape of my lining pieces, it often comes to that, you know, the way this shouldn't really look like this. I don't really know why it does, but it's no great shakes because the lining has a lot of excess anyway that can just be worked around. It's all get tucked away. I'm not really too worried about it. But yeah. Get rid of the basting. I'll see if I can do my aforementioned favourite thing this time. Should be this. Ooh. There we go. And yeah, press this open and then I will show you what it is I have in mind. All right, cool. Okay, yeah, I've been trying to kind of work this out in my head. Sort of daydreaming about it. It's not especially complicated, but it's certainly feeling kind of rather complicated to me because I'm an idiot. Let's just get rid of this excess for now. Yeah, you'll see what I mean in just a second. So yeah, just working by the standard sewing principle of right sides facing. I think what I need to do first is kind of bag out the actual sleeve. Should probably do this the other way around. So again, this part of the actual sleeve is the hem of the sleeve that's going to kind of get turned up like that. And first thing I'm going to do is kind of wrap this sleeve in the lining. See, already it's like I've kind of a bit lost here. I can't really see anything. Yeah, line up the seams, which again will be made fiddlier by my aforementioned seam allowance issue with the sleeve part, the proper sleeve. Okay, and then yeah, like allowing for all the excess I'm going to want to have coming out the top there. Guess, yeah, I think then what I'm going to do is just kind of sew around here basically, because then that's going to fold under. You know what, it's really hard to explain what I mean. I'm sure, you know, most of you already know exactly what it is I'm trying to say, but I guess I'll just do it and then show you. That's probably the easiest way to get around this. Oh, I've got this right way around? No, I haven't. This is exactly the opposite way around. Yeah, I mean, it probably would be easier if I just did this by hand, to be honest, the way this has gone on. That is the beauty of hand stitching, is that it just, you know, no matter what it is you're actually trying to do at any given moment, it just makes perfect sense. Like, you know, it's just like, oh cool, you just put the seam where you want it to go and then you hand stitch it. All right, let's try this out. Hey, let's just pin these seam allowances together maybe. See, I'm really just guessing here. I don't really know how this is going to pan out. I would advise against it. But okay, if I can see maybe 3 centimeters there and have a seam allowance of 1.5 centimeters, I think. Yes, let's try that, shall we? Okay. Yeah, see, I've already started sewing a few stitches and realised I've worked this out wrong. It's almost kind of like, you know, trying to understand the meaning of a sentence with like 4 double negatives in it. Because, you know, right side's facing, but then it gets turned on the inside, and that means it comes round up in a certain direction, and then certain things are doubled up on the fold, so how much allowance you need to leave, and so on and so forth. I think I just need to kind of basically pull this down a little bit and do the seam a little bit nearer to the raw edge. Maybe like so, because I'm forgetting that this raw edge is going to fold up and be facing up, so the actual hem edge of the sleeve is more up here, and I'm thinking of it being here. You know what, again, there's no point me trying to explain it. I'm too stupid for that. Let's just try and do it, shall we? Oy vey. Yeah, it's quite tight as well. But yeah, I do think this is going to work. I think this is, you know, making sense. This little plan. Again, I say plan. I think this is just probably the standard logical way of doing this, but it feels rather counterintuitive and illogical right now, the way I'm doing it. But yeah, anything to save some unnecessary hand sewing. Yes, that thing that I'm always going on about how much I love. Okay, so that's kind of what I've got there. You see? Let's join there, that's where the hem will be. So the first thing you need to do is fold it up on the inside, so turn this back out, inside out again, and after all hand stitch the garment sleeve fabric bit into itself just to secure that hem in place, and then I can do all my pressing and so on. Actually, does this even work? Yeah, it should work. Yeah, exactly. So I'll kind of fold this up. Well, I guess the problem is I can't see the hem, but I'll work it out. Fold this up, hand stitch this here with a hem stitch, the usual thing. And then, yeah, and then turn it all inside out. I think that should work, I think. Cool, yeah, so just hand sewing that now. Yeah, and you may notice that I've actually unpicked and resewn this after all the seam between the lining and the garment sleeve because, yeah, again, it's that double negative thing of, you know, everything's folding up in 3 different directions and going in a weird direction or a direction that is unintuitive to kind of like calculate with. And yeah, I realized that I had left sort of like 4 centimeters too much seam allowance at the top of the sleeve there, and I don't want things to get, you know, wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I don't want things to get too out of sync in that regard. So yeah, just do this now and then hopefully all should be kind of revealed. And I realized actually there's other steps of the, I think in my eagerness, once again, why was I congratulating myself so much for my improvisatory, you know, acumen? In my eagerness to just sort of like make this up as I went along, I forgot some other rather sensible steps, which include, for instance, hand sewing the seam allowances of both the lining sleeve and the garment sleeve into each other just to help that stay more fixed. Thankfully, I can still do that. But again, you know, sometimes it's all very well making things up a little bit as you go, but you don't want to throw the book out with the baby and the bathwater, do you? You want to hold on to the steps that make sense. Cool, because I don't want a lining and a sleeve that are just kind of floating too disconnected from each other. Yeah, I mean, really, I think materially I haven't really saved myself any trouble here by doing this with the machine than by hand. Anyway, I'll stop whinging. Okay, all right, let's see if this has turned into anything remotely functional or useful. Oh, I don't even know which way I've got to do this. Okay, let's start by doing that, and then, no, that's the wrong way, okay. Alrighty, yep, cool, and then there you have it. That's machine stitched in there. Good Lord. Yeah, and I just said obviously I can still do the whole thing of sewing the seam allowances into each other. I actually can't. I would have had to have done that before. I guess I won't be doing that then, will I? Because I've already unpicked this once and undone this once, and I think this is taking rather more time than I could be bothered to spare further. So yeah, I'm just going to go and press all of this and then do some further basting, and yeah, then we'll get on to setting this bad boy, I suppose. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Oh, okay, I managed to do a little bit of a seam allowance to seam allowance stuff. I pressed that now, so that's going to be kind of the sitting position of the lining hem there, and that's got a little bit of room to fold back like that, as it would. Oh, okay, let's turn this right side out. Do one last little baste. Yeah, unfortunately, this seam allowance thing, the thing that's come from, you know, me having to fold it all one way, it's creating this kind of unpleasant little bulking here I'm not really mad about it. I think unfortunately it's a lesser two evils. Yeah, and again, maybe if this is sort of obviously a big chunky coat, maybe it won't look too weird. Just add some sort of structure to the sleeve, I don't know. But anyway, so just gonna do one last little basting stitch across here now, keep the lining up, and then we'll get to preparing the armhole. Again, I think I'm only gonna have spirit, will, patience, physical energy, etc. to do one of these today. This is, well, I would say it's taken a lot more time than I expected, but then I always expect it to take way too little time, which makes you think, well, I should expect it to take more time, or indeed about the right amount of time going forward, but obviously one never has that much foresight. Does one? Cool, okay. That's that. In will go the arm. Not that you need me to tell you how a sleeve works. Yeah, that's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Feels good. Alrighty. Alrighty then. Starting off, need to reinforce the armhole. And for that, of course, I have my trusty strip of pocketing. This is cut on the cross grain, so it's a little bit more pliable than straight grain, but not quite as on the bias. So again, I've just steamed, pressed that with the iron to bend it into this nice little sort of rainbow shape. And yeah, so I'll do the left armhole because I can't be bothered to take out that muslin sleeve for now. So here's the left armhole, and all I need to do really is just slot this in. This is going to cover the entire space from about the front notch here around to, well, yeah, basically most of the armhole. So slot that in between the garment fabric and the, what's it called, the canvas. And yeah, just baste that in, and then we'll be ready to go. Do me, easier said than done, just like literally everything else in this cursed art form. I'll take that back, okay. I really need to start having my thread already ready before I get everything into exact position. Yeah, so for now, just keeping this basting within what will become the seam allowance. And you can see already, actually, this is some of the most worrisome fraying I've had. I can't really tell how much I've lost there, but I'm gonna stick with my 2 centimetre-ish seam allowance, which I may trim once I've basted it and everything and sewn it. But yeah, this pocketing is just to cover the stretch of the armhole where the sleeve itself will be gathered into it. So the last little underside part of the armhole where it's just a sort of one-to-one correspondence of the sleeve and the armhole seams, that doesn't need reinforcing. But yeah, the rest will just get this little bit of support basically for its labours, its efforts. Cool. Never mind just the setting of the sleeves, it's also like getting in the sleeve head and all these other little steps, these final little steps that you're so desperate to just be kind of shot of once you get to this point. But they keep you honest, and there's nothing wrong with that. And once you do finally have everything in place and you can kind of put your hand in that sleeve head, see it dangling the right way, it's a good feeling, it's a good feeling. Worth the pain, or almost, at least. That's fully reinforced now. What can I say? It's time to baste the sleeve itself in place. And I'm gonna try and do it the proper way this time. As I've occasionally said, I have my own little sort of cheaty, backstitchy, pick stitch kind of way of basting the sleeve in. I think I'm gonna try doing it as the real ones do. I'm sure there's a reason why they do it that way. If not several. Where is my needle? Okay, well, that's a me problem, not a you problem. So just doing the first base through now, kind of distributing. Why am I doing this? It's just gonna poke me in the hand. Yeah, and I do think with this, I mean, well, there have been times I've done this before and it's just taken several goes, which is quite normal, to get it all distributed evenly, all this ease that you need to put in. So the idea is that, in case you don't know, again, the top of the armhole is longer than the top of the sleeve is longer than the armhole it's fitting into, so you need to sort of move the ease around like this and sort of spread it around the length of what will become the machine stitch that you're going to do. And yeah, while it is quite difficult just in and of itself to do this, oftentimes I think what gets me is not so much the difficulty of getting it right, but just the sort of frustration of having to handle these ridiculously sort of flappy bits of one thing or another, you know. Here I've got this entire massive coat artifice in my hands, and shoulder pads in the way, and lining in the way, and canvas in the way, and just everything kind of in the way. And if there's one thing I hate in this life, it's things getting in my way. So I really have picked the wrong hobby, I suppose. But yeah, like I think once you've done it a few times, you kind of get the hang of, and of course once your pattern maybe is kind of a bit more consistent, you kind of get the hang of how it needs to work. And that's all well and good, but yeah, it's just a bit fiddly and a bit frustrating and a bit rage-inducing sometimes when you're trying to just keep everything on an even keel, and nothing wants to stay there basically. Yeah, see, I'm not too happy with this so far. Yeah, this hasn't been distributed very well, has it? Well, whatever, let's keep going. See it, so it looks... Yeah, so as I said, I want to do it the proper way this time. So normally what I would do is I would kind of backstitch with each one, and that would already lock this basting seam in place. But what you're meant to do really is do your one row of stitches all around the armhole, get everything in position, and then you do another row of stitches, essentially stitching in the gaps of where you've stitched. So where, for instance, on this side, this is now on the top, this little bit of white thread I'll stitch so that it's on the bottom there. So I'll kind of stitch and pick up those same bits, and that'll just lock this situation in place, basically. Okay. Yeah, I'm hoping, again, with this thicker fabric, it'll all just be a bit easier because the ripples will be chunkier, and, you know, I don't think you're gonna get any sort of nasty little, like, pinches or genuine puckers. But maybe I'm wrong, who knows? Okay, where are we? Who are we? What do we want? When do we want it? Couldn't tell you. Ow. Okay. Yeah, I think this is where that doubled down seam allowance in the sleeve itself is going to cause a few problems maybe in trying to get that to, you know, disappear essentially into the armhole. Yeah, also I think my record so far of only sewing with really dark fabrics on dark days has often hindered this from being an especially cinematic process for you guys, but, you know, what can I say? I'm not really a big fan of wearing white all the time. Although I would like to make a sort of cream summer suit at some point, maybe a three-piece affair. Have a nice breathy cotton or linen in honour of my guy over there, Porco Rosso. Got to get my waistcoat sorted first though, don't I? Ugh. Yeah, okay, this is turning out about as difficult as I'd imagined in my more honest moments it would be. Yeah, I think the evenness of my stitch length here is leaving a lot to be desired, but then when has it ever not? You know, I was hoping at least, what with this being a sort of proper nice wool fabric, that the getting it to shrink away all the ripples would work out a bit more consistently than it has with other fabrics, but I'm not gonna celebrate too soon. Okay, let's see how this looks. I can't say I have high hopes, to be honest, but not too bad actually, maybe. I think I might have to go and try that on in the mirror. Check it out. Yeah, the seam allowance there at the back of the sleeve has caused a few problems, but nothing it can't be fixed, I don't think. Yeah, it actually is more forgiving than yeah, lighter fabrics. So I'm just gonna go and try this on. Check the picture's okay. You're not invited, so see you in a minute. You know what? Actually fits more or less perfectly. It's hanging beautifully. I retract my retractions about how easy this may or may not be, or be proving to be. I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah, I just need to make sure I'm not losing track there of this big chunky seam allowance at the bottom here at the back. But that's fine, that's what the next step's for, and yeah, pretty pleased. And, you know, not to abuse a favoured saying of mine in these scenarios, but once the sleeve head's in, all shall well and truly be well. So, let's see if I can both myself make sense and indeed, for your benefit, show what happens next with this next round of basting stitches. Oh, there's already a little knot there. Good stuff. Okay, where should I start? Okay. So what's happening here is this. So I've already done a little bit of this, but this is the bit I have to do. So if you can see, let's see, can you see? Am I showing you this? Is this on camera? If you see here, that's one of the original stitches I did. This little white bit there. I think you can see that. And then there's the next one. There's the next one, and there's the next one, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that with this row of stitches, where these went down, I'm going up. So the gaps in between those existing stitches are what I'm filling out, in other words. So threads coming out here, and then where I see this existing stitch here, I'm going to go under and kind of pick up where that was on the other side, and then come out, and then so you end up with this sort of constant stepping of stitches, basically, like that. So yeah, again, go under there, come back up. Again, the consistency of the stitch length here, which is partly to do with the thickness of the fabric, is not ideal, I guess. I would imagine, I don't know really, but I also don't think it's the end of the world. And again, this is just helping so that the existing distribution of the ease that is going to get pressed away This is helping sort of straddle the line between having enough fixity that isn't shifting around in its inherent position, but enough flexibility that it can still get pressed away with the steam and the iron, which I'm going to do in a second as soon as I've done this, basically, these last few stitches. So yeah, so that is now a consistent run of 2 rows of stitching there. Just gonna keep that in place. And what I'm gonna do now is go to the iron, and where these little ripples are, I'm just gonna press down on it with the iron, and that should hopefully sort of shrink them away, or at least enough that any puckering or genuine proper rippling, visible rippling kind of goes away, and you're left with the excess at the top of the sleeve, but not all this bunching fabric in the seam itself, basically. And once I've done that, I will sew it with the machine, and the sleeve will be theoretically attached and set. So I'm just gonna double check everything's in place, and if it is, then I'll press it and then I'll come back. Okay, yeah, everything is in order. Everything is ready to sew. Yeah, I'm feeling rather like my little porcos there, whose costume one day I will be imitating on this channel, but we'll see. For now, one thing at a time. Let's do it. There's nothing left to do but do it, really, isn't there? Oh my God. Also, just the ginormousness of this coat getting in the way of everything else on the desk. It's just causing such havoc. What a terrorizing influence it is. Oh, golly gosh, okay. Yeah, I think I might also trim the seam allowance once I'm satisfied that I've sewed it correctly. You know, that I've got the right bit of the sleeve and the right bit of the armhole and so on. You know, it wouldn't be the first time that I've had to unpick a armhole stitch, a sleeve stitch, and redo it. But I hope this won't be joining the annals of that particular operation. Okay. I can think of a few operations where it would be more heartbreaking to discover that your bobbin ran out 2 stitches ago than this one, but thankfully it's looking good down there. Okay, I think we're getting into the interesting territory now where we're tackling with that back sleeve part with the doubled up seam allowance. It's just going to be what it's going to be, really, isn't it? Oh, dearie me. Yeah, again, the idea being with the way that that seam allowance in the sleeve has panned out, that if I were to not sew with the deep enough seam allowance, there would be basically this hole in the sleeve stitch line, which, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of holes in sewing, but they're usually to be avoided. I think the main difficulty I always have is just sewing in a straight line with this. Like, the amount of little zigzags I get historically is suboptimal, as some would say. Let's see how we've done. Rather optimistic, eh? Putting away in the machine already. Obviously, I need to get rid of all my basting first, so let's do that. Let's probably not do it from this side. And another thing I'm always terrible at doing is not catching the basting in the stitch, which makes it that bit harder to remove when the time comes. But again, I have high hopes with how this has panned out. I think, again, the fabric is actually very forgiving. I think the thicker the fabric, the more forgiving in this particular operation it is. Okay, I think that's done. Most of the basting's out. Yeah, there's some more. And overall, first glance, that's looking like a handsome enough seam line, I would say. This was the danger zone around here, around the back. This is where, with all this, again, don't want to keep harping on about it, but the doubled up seam allowance was threatening to really kick off and cause issues. And yeah, I think I've gotten away with it. It looks okay. Well, there's not a gaping hole at least, so there's that, which is usually the bare minimum, but I'll take what victories I can get. Holy moly, there we go. I think I will take that. I think this has gone well enough. There's a sleeve. Don't it look handsome? Does it look handsome? Please say it does. Handsome enough, I should wager. Oh, yeah, well, I think this corner of the screen is rather expressing my feelings right now. Oh my goodness gracious me. Okay, yeah, well, there's sleeve number 1 done. I'd wanted to get on and do the sleeve head and everything as well today, but I don't have time because, again, surprise, surprise, this has dragged out for much longer than I, on the basis of, well, you've thought enough experience, assumed it would. So yeah, but I'm going to get on and do that, and indeed the other sleeve, unsurprisingly, in the next sort of week or so, over the coming days. And yeah, I think then aim to pretty much have this coat done. Maybe focus a little bit on the finishing, some of the finishing elements, but at the very least, I'll put up a video very soon, next week, if you're watching this kind of in real time. Just, yeah, displaying the coat, showing it off, hopefully, if it's worth showing off. And yeah, just giving one last rundown on it basically, and talking over any final points that are worth relating. Yeah, for now, I don't know how languid or hangouty this is going to turn out in the edit, but I hope you've enjoyed it as ever. And I apologise for my extended absence last month or so. But of course, if you're watching this in like 4 years, that'll mean nothing to you. So if that's you, hope you enjoy in the future. If you can, cool.